Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wired for Wonder. My name is Lori Kirkland, and I'm excited to be hosting another podcast episode, Wired for Wonder, where we dive into with forward-thinking leaders. What could the future of work look like, and how can we as humans be better and answer the call for leaders right now to be thinking differently? With me today, I'm excited to have Ken Rice, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Pickleman's Franchising. Ken, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Lori. I sure appreciate you having me on. This is a something I'm really passionate about, to be honest with you. The human element, we can't lose it.
So, when we maybe just give us a little history of what you've done over the last few years and what you're most passionate about right now.
Well, what I've done is, I've been in the restaurant business pretty much most of my life, except for a short period of time. I was served in the Gulf War in the military, but most recently, I've been the chief operating officer of Pickleman's, and one of the things that I came on board. I did a listening tour. I went and talked to all of our franchisees and said, "Hey, where are your pain points? What can we do to be better?" One was our POS system, our point of sale, our register system, and which is a common one, and a big lift, right, to when you change out a POS system. And then number two is they said, "We really don't like or get along with the franchisor." And I said, "Oh, we need to work on that." So, one of the first things I did is I went and started looking for new technologies and building out our tech stack. And along with that, I said, okay, what do we need to do? So we started a thing called Pickle Time, where all the top leaders of the corporate company, the franchisor, myself, the chief operating officer, the marketing department, and all those get together. And once a month, we get together for an hour call, and we give them an update on all the things that are going on, and they have a chance to talk to us and ask us questions. And then we also started adding, franchisees to all the major decision-making groups that we had, from marketing to operations to IT and all that, so that they had a bigger voice in what we did. And it took about a year and a half, but that trust was reestablished, and now we work collaboratively as a team for the best interest of their company and ours. Because at the end of the day, we're like married to each other, because our success is their success, and their success is our success. So that's where I'm at right now, and we're looking to build. We have 33 restaurants, built the last one about a week ago, and we've got about 7 more on the docket this year, and should have 50 plus by the end of 2026.
Wow. So that's super impressive. And it's exciting to hear, just being in the hospitality industry, you are in a people industry, right? It's very
Yes.
people centric. And you brought up, I think, issues that it doesn't matter what, marketplace you're in, that everyone faces, which is one, how do you get rid of the us versus them, right? There's a lot of teams playing against each other internally. And I guess I would just ask you, Ken, like, what do you think when you look at the culture that you've now been working on for the last year and a half, but are probably still working on? What do you think was the biggest thing that allowed you to start bridging down the division between the different groups?
Well, two things: becoming very transparent in everything we do, and including them in everything that we end up, doing. That doesn't mean they have veto power or that, but we actively sought out and listened to what they are doing. And especially in a company like ours, that initially we just now have one corporate restaurant. Before that, our whole company was franchised out. So they were the ones who had the feet on the ground. They're the ones who had to operate and execute on a daily basis. So who better to talk about how the initiatives that we come up with are actually working? And then when they saw that we actually listened and we cared and we paid attention to them, it couldn't get much better. Now, do we have still conflicts? Well, of course. I mean, I have a family. Do me and my wife, I used to hear sometimes, well, we've been married 50 years and we've never had an argument. I said, then you must not be telling the truth much.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Me and my wife, we argue, on a regular basis. But, at the end of the day, you don't always have to agree. And this is what I feel like in any relationship. You don't always have to agree, but you have to know that you're in that relationship. You love each other and you care about each other. And ultimately, agreeing on everything isn't the necessary thing. It's understanding where the other person comes from. And I really believe in, you approach everyone, and I tell my team, look at everyone, treat them with respect, kindness, and love, and then
Mhm.
meet them as an individual. And when you do that and you be empathetic and you put yourself in their shoes and understand why they think the way they do, you don't have to agree with them, but then you can understand them. And I find that fosters great relationship and great growth in being able to accomplish things that you can do together. And you don't always have to agree on everything. That's not necessary, but you have to know that you're working for the best for each other.
Well, it's interesting because that like reminds me of, right, like productive friction, right? Like you said, having to learn to be honest in a way that isn't judgmental, that is a way of how can I be curious? Because as human beings, we are wired to connect, right? Like literally our survival in our DNA says that connection is being part of the tribe and having a relationship with other people. And so in the work environment, when people don't bring in or don't value the contribution of others, they're severing that ability for individuals to connect, which does lead to tough friction. But as we like look forward and we think about your case, it seems like there's this opportunity, right, to look at work a little bit differently, much more like you do with your wife, where it's more valuable to actually be honest and be personally accountable and integrity with yourself as you confront friction to turn it into something that's productive rather than just divisive. Um, and with that, so thinking along those lines, how do we in the workplace today, are you seeing examples where, people are using judgment more than, just judging others' work rather than their own accountability or integrity of being honest with each other? Have you ran across that as you're looking to do your cultural change or as you're changing your culture?
Yeah, there's still sometimes it's a thought process of, you know, one of the things being the chief operating officer, I have to work cross functionally. So and in fact, I'm probably the hub of the wheel, sort of my team, because we have to work with the marketing department, we have to work with the development department, all the people on the corporate side, but then we also have the franchisees who have their specific needs and all these stakeholders that you have to sort of meld together. And sometimes people are like, you know, you need to stay in your own little area. And when you
Mhm.
isolate people, um, what it does, you got to see a large vision, and you have to see where each of the parts go to fulfilling that vision. And when people, and here's the thing, this is human nature. We want to be heard and respected and taken seriously. And I found, one of some of the best things that I used to do, and this is go back when I was a franchisee myself and I owned Wendy's and Tim Hortons restaurants. I I would go in, and some of my best conversations, I had great ones with the district manager or the director of operations or even the store manager. But some of my best conversations, and I found out where we had need where it was that I would hop on and try to make sandwiches, and I was really good at it one time. And then, as you get away from it, you're not as good, but you're working with them and you're like, what are some of the things that you like about working here? And, how did we do on training you, and what are some of the things that really bug you? And then you all of a sudden find out that, if we did it this way, I mean, something as silly as this, he goes, see how this door opens? Every time I open it, it gets in my way and I can't. So I'm like, well, if we put a different hinge on it and it opened the other way, oh, that would solve and that was just a simple thing like that. But, no one else knew that because that's the guy who has to do it hundreds of times a day, and how do we do, what are some of the challenges getting out, we want you to talk to the guests. Well, we're burdened with this, so we can't get out to the dining room because we're always filling out this paperwork or doing something. All right, well, if we move this to somebody else, oh yeah, well, yeah, I'd have more time and I can go out and talk to the guests more. And you're right. I've always said, I've worked we're in the hospitality business in restaurants. And I said, we have guests, and you have to think of that person coming in as like your guest to your house versus, if you work in maybe, a hardware store, you may have a customer there. But when you feed someone food, that's a very intimate, personal experience, and you got to have people to do that. And here's the thing: we always say, I used to laugh. I'd go into restaurants and you'd see this thing that says "smile," and I'm thinking, if we have to tell someone to smile and order them, well, our culture must be dysfunctional. How about we create a culture that where people want to smile? And that's how we do it. If we have to force people to smile, maybe we're the problem, not so much just getting that because we can tell a fake smile and we can tell a genuine smile. And we need to create genuine smiles. And I think part of that is just making sure that people know that they are important. And a lot of times, by how you get people to feel important and know that they're important, is you have to stop for a minute and ask them questions and listen to them. And it doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but when people know that they're being listened to and heard, they feel valued.
That is so true. I couldn't agree with you more. And you touched on so many things that kind of spark my interest of one, when you listen to people, you're activating a different part of your brain, and others are actually putting their thoughts into the physical form, which actually changes it and helps them get clearer. So you're just creating a space for both of you to understand each other a little bit more, which can remove some of that friction anyways. But you talked about the processes. What I heard you were talking about is people having to do paperwork and processes and things getting in the way of the human relationships, right? And I
Yep.
think that I can think of like healthcare where that happens. I can think of, large corporations where that happens, where the process has become more important than the actual outcome of whatever the customer is trying to buy from a company, right? Whether it's food or not, whether it's a guest, right, of at your table. What do you think, like looking at the future of work, right? Like, what do you think are some of the benefits that maybe AI could bring to that specific section of, right, automating some of the processes so that people can get back to being a human?
I'm glad you said that because I've been on a few of these technology, and you're not really technology, but it is a little. And when I talk about technology, I think it's very important to me is you can go too far on technology. You have to keep the human element where it needs to be. And you say, how can technology come alongside the human element to assist so you can keep those human interactions becoming more fruitful and have time to be able to do them? So, a couple of things in my industry, for example, I see AI as playing a part in answering a phone you know, and beyond the phone tree. That's annoying to people. But an
So
AI that could answer the phone in a nice way, and but also is able to recognize when there's if it's a simple "I need this," that phone tree, and if it sounds fairly human and has an empathetic thought, and it's funny, some of the technology has gotten very, very good at mimicking a
yeah,
human voice and intonations and stuff, but being also able to understand that if there's some specifics that it alerts the human on the other side that, hey, we need to have this other person help out and do that. The other part is, I think that a lot of data analysis, and we need to do data analysis. It's very important. But what it can do is AI. I see a general manager may have to spend a couple hours a week looking into food cost. They're looking at all the data that come through and looking at the outliers and stuff. And sometimes we would set it up where we could have like red and green, showing the outliers and stuff. But with AI, it possibly could go, all right, here's the outliers. teach the AI, here's some outliers, here's some solutions, and it just saves that general manager time, especially say a brand new general manager that doesn't have the skills. Instead of spending 2 or 3 hours analyzing where problem points are, it could help identify those problem points quickly, along with here's a list of proven solutions that, so yes, that,
Yeah.
what in the past might take a manager to ramp up to be able to have those solutions, or would have to call their supervisor and get more now it's right there for them. So that takes and that allows them more time to actually, okay, I see a problem. I see the solution. Now I can go and work with my team, that human interaction, and have that ability to be right out there. Or they have more time to go spend time with their guests, so they can interact with their guests, because the fear is, we've taken almost all human interactions out in some places, and that's
Yeah.
problematic. You go into a restaurant and, okay, I'm just going to order my food from here, and there is some places for that, but I think the most successful places are going to make sure that the human interaction at the guest level, the guest coming in the door, and your internal guest level are still there. But we free up the time where it's not wasteful, that those times that you have with your internal guests and your external guests are more impactful. And you actually now have the time to do it.
Right, like going back to the story you shared earlier, right? If some of the mundane tasks that, right, you can create AI super easy, right, to be able to just analyze your data. There's a human element there where as a leader you have to start thinking about like what are the questions, right, that I'm going to be asking so that I can save myself 2 or 3 hours. That's easy, but the bigger win is what you just talked about, like going back to you spending time with the guy who was spending, if having employees are the biggest cost for any
Yep.
any restaurateur at all, or anyone in the hospitality industry. But if you can have that time to be like, let's let the people who are doing it actually contribute to optimizing the experience, you're going
Yes.
to offer and learn so much more, on top of getting the machines. So at Deep Human X, we really believe that there's a human plus machine equation, and that as humans, we're going to have to up level our skills, right? Like
Well,
we're going to have to think about.
Lori, you say that. I think as the future comes on, there's going to be a lot of places that embrace the machine. And I think the ones who are going to win this battle at the end of the day are the ones who understand where the machine can fit in, but where the human is still there and is necessary. Because when you go in as a customer or a guest, and you have the right amount of machine that simplifies what I'm doing, but with the same caring, because there's no way that you can get the empathy, the kindness, the service of a human serving you through a machine. You just can't. You can try to mimic that all day long, but you can't get that. But you can get some efficiency. So we're in a quick service restaurant, so I want to make it very efficient. But I also want them to come out feeling really good, like, man, that was quick and efficient, and they really cared about me.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? And I think we've got to be careful, and we got to be very thoughtful as we go into embracing the new machine age, and we also can't be afraid of embracing it. The other people who are not going to be successful, the ones that we've done it this way for the last 500 years, and this has worked. Well, those are the ones that are those are the companies that last 20, 30 years, but that if you can't adjust and change with the current technologies, you're going to get left behind. You've got to be up there, but you also got to see how it fits in and how you keep the human element into it.
I love that. And it reminds me of, I feel like we just had this lesson after the pandemic, right? We all had this global reset, and then many companies went back after and said, okay, we're not going to actually change our modes of operation. Yes, you worked remotely, but now you're going to come back and you're going to operate the same way. And they didn't adjust and they didn't change. And I think we're seeing it across every industry where like, hey, that playbook for leaders doesn't really work anymore. What worked for 50 years between the pandemic and the changes that AI are bringing, right? It opens up a whole new place of change, like where we're at in the workplace. Um, what is your opinion of AI helping in those areas where struggles and challenges come up?
Well, again, if it's structured well and you teach the I think there's so many things. I really think it becomes helpful, like I see in my industry, for new managers, new franchisees, somebody that's new to the thing. It allows you to have a mentor. I mean, AI could replace a mentor in some of the ways because some things are just, if it's mathematical. If you have X problem, you have, and these are the data points that show what contributed to X. Well, these are the Y solutions that we have that show us where to do it. And it'll save some time, there are some benefit. And again, you've got to be careful on what it is that you're going to be doing. It won't replace a human mentor, but the human mentor can be more of a person that, where so the technical parts can be solved easily through AI. But what
Mhm.
your human mentor, your boss, can be working on is your interpersonal relationship skills that usually define which leaders become average leaders. Average leaders have great technical skills, but weak people skills. And also those people, what I found is people that have weak people skills and great technical skills struggle in leadership. They can be
Mm.
great at doing their one point. People that struggle with technical skills and have people skills, they can be taught the technical skills. I think that part could be replaced, or in a large part, by AI. And that can be where it can come in. And I think we also don't know what AI, as it evolves, it becomes better and better and better. But I think we always have to realize I don't believe there's ever going to be a place that AI truly replaces a human being in everything, because an AI person could mimic emotions perhaps at some point, but they're never going to be able to truly understand empathy. They're never going to truly understand, respect, kindness, and love. There's just, there's a need for us as human beings to connect with each other. And unfortunately, no matter how technological or, great this robot becomes or looks like a human being, there'll always be something that it's just not a human being. So I
I,
think
I
we're going to have that.
I love that too, and I 100% agree with you. I think that there's some leadership thinking shifts that need to go on, right? That it is beyond process, it is beyond expertise. Like, yes, you have that, but there are some human skills that for many decades, right? Almost since the Industrial Revolution, we've been trying to get humans to be like machines. And that was a very creative, shift in humanity. But I actually think we're back to now where the creative shift in humanity is going to be that we're actually going to go back to more being more human, right? We have to become coaches, we have to become leaders. And we have this awesome opportunity that AI is bringing to say, wait a minute, what are the things that I value? And what are the things you talked about, right? Being wired for connection. It's like we have millions of years of evolution in our croc brains that
Yes.
have all sorts of receptors to understand things like love and kindness and creativity and empathy and holistic thinking. But we don't practice those or don't have a lot of room in the workplace today. So I'm really hoping that as we see these changes, that we do see some shifts where people are getting like, hey, yes, use AI for your own personal mentor. I use it for research and design. And I had the craziest prompt yesterday that did an analysis based on all of my, though, because I clearly use all of the different LLMs a lot. And I went in and put in this prompt that did an analysis of me based on how I asked the questions. And it was so spot on, but it was also a really safe place for me to look at and say, oh my gosh, it just summarized struggles I've been having my own life in a problem statement that I have not yet in my life been able to get to that simplicity to. But the beautiful part about it was that it's a machine. It doesn't have emotion. So it was just
Right.
saying, here's the trend of what I'm seeing. And it gave me as a human being a way to like read this blatant thing that was very correct. And then it also highlighted for me patterns that I run. And I'm like, all of those are great, right? I mean, all of those are exactly what I do, both good and bad. But it gave me this opportunity to then absorb as a human being to say, okay, I'm going to take and shift now that I see and understand and am aware of my problem. Which is my problem, just to let everyone know, is that I'm always trying to avoid chaos by, helping maintain some order. Um, but at the sacrifice of often not being seen. So I want to make an impact, but then I get worried about the chaos and order. So I don't always get seen. That was very vulnerable for me to share that with you. Everyone's
Well,
probably
thank
like, yeah,
you.
we all feel like that, but that was my big one. But it is really interesting how using the technology actually is helping me become better off of screens. And I'm finding myself being able to be off screens much, much more, which is pretty awesome. So thanks for letting me share that story, but it does tie into also Bill Gates recently said that with AI, humans aren't going to have to work at all. So that leaves the question of if AI is saving people time and we have, let's say you get 50% of your time freed up. What
Hmm.
do you, thinking of Pickleman's, like, what do you think you would want to fill your team's time with, or that you would want them to, request to fill their time with? Have you thought about that question at all?
I think, again, one of our taglines is whole lot of love, one big pickle. So I think that one of the things we could do is, how do we, become more than a sandwich brand? How do we help humanity more? What causes could we get around that our teams could help make a better place? Doug Stritzel, our founder, said one of his goals of creating this brand was to help people create, you know, uh, jobs or opportunity, entrepreneurial opportunities for themselves, but also to leave something of value to the world. And,
Mm.
I think if we had a more time that we're not spending on, mundane tasks that a computer could do, we could spend more time on, helping him fulfill that goal of, how can we as employees of Pickleman, help the world, the society, or even the local town or areas that we're at become better because of us.
Oh, I love that. That's a pretty strong purpose. And it really sounds like a purpose driven culture, which
Yeah.
is really where I think we need to be looking. Because again, if we can get rid of the mundane tasks, that gives us this opportunity where, like we talked about earlier, people can contribute what is important to them and at the same time align with the bigger company goals and kind of flip the switch on how work has been done, which has been like everybody, go to work, make money, and just accept it,
Yeah.
which isn't very rewarding as a human being.
Yeah, well, I've always said, set a grand vision, because people are going to come to work because they need to make a living and support their family. But if they can work for something as opposed to just doing something, they're going to work harder because they feel like they're contributing to something that's greater than themselves. And when we can
Mhm.
contribute to something that's greater than ourselves, that's the most satisfying thing that we as human beings can ever do. So, especially if we can help others become, whatever if we can help lift other people up, there's nothing better. One of the things I talk about is I ask my team every day, I said, one question I want you to ask is, who was made better through their interaction with you today? And if you
Mm.
can't say that someone was, maybe think about how you need to change that for tomorrow. Because the best thing we can do is not go in there and just give out facts, figures, different things, is we can help come along somebody and help them become better because of your interaction. And then, hopefully someday, one of the best things that ever happened for me is, when I have people call me from jobs long ago, thank you for all you did for me. You helped me so much. You know, that means more to me than almost anything else I can get, that I made some small difference in somebody's life because of my interaction with them.
Like that feels good as a
It
human,
does.
right? Like it
It
feels
does.
good to be of service. That doesn't mean you sacrifice yourself for others, but there is a bit of wisdom in that statement of, right, if you're making the world better for other people, then you actually are making it better for yourself as well.
No, absolutely.
You mentioned also, it made me think of some lazy leadership where people come in and say, do this, 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 and they're very they give their teams a list. You called it technical before, like, right here's the order that I need. And it's devoid of that human.
Mm.
But we have this opportunity, right? Like as leaders to really change and look at what could work look like in the future. If I were to ask you to give me two sentences or less, what do you think the future of work would look like due to AI? Could it look like?
It it'll allow us to get rid of some of the more systematic things and become more humanistic, in a way that, I mean, we have greater interaction with each other, and some of those tasks that were, out there, and a lot of times people do that because of because they don't have a choice, they don't have the time, they have to give a list and give it out there. Now you can put some, why, the whys of why you're doing something. How I'm a dishwasher, how do I contribute? Well,
Yeah.
when you teach them how important their job is, and if they weren't there, how tough the place would be, and they realize, wow, this is pretty important. Yes, it is. It's no more or less important than anything else that anyone else does out there. And when they understand that they're important, their job is important, and then they realize that they're important as well.
That is great. And it really brings it back to, right, the purpose driven work where when you have a bigger goal, people can figure out for themselves how they can feel like they're contributing.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about the future of work, will you share with our listeners what's something that is like 5 years out that that you feel like, in your role right now that you want to bring, that's, something tough that you don't have the answer to? What's something in the future that you're a goal that you're trying to achieve?
For me personally,
For Picklemans.
oh, for Pickleman. So Pickleman's, from a future goal. Well, one, in 5 years, I'd love to be sitting at about 500 restaurants, for one.
Mm,
Number two, because I think a large expansion. Number two would be that we have a culture that that really is a tight culture, that people feel valued, and that people see Picklemans as bigger than just a sandwich chain. They see us as making a difference in the communities and the areas that we serve.
that's wonderful. What are some things that you think it will take for you to actually get there? 500 restaurants from 33 is a great leap. What are some of the
Well,
things you think personally you're going to have to
we've
be?
got to, yeah, we've got to continue to prove that our brand is easy to operate, and ease the operation would be, AI could be a big part of that ease the operation. I
Yeah.
think, like I said, I think when it comes, we just onboarded a new training system called Opus, and I think Opus already has some AI that it allows us to give training in 100 different languages right now.
Nice.
And that training could be, more individualized through AI, because AI could, help, find people where they're at. I say treat every person as an individual. AI can help identify, to your point, you did some sort of look, AI through asking some questions could help identify where this person's at, and help them individually with the needs that they need to be successful from at every level. I think that, they could be, and it just will be an opportunity where that our people feel less bogged down by tedious tasks, and more free to be able to be themselves and interact with each other and with our guests in a more fruitful way.
I like that. I like that. And Let me ask you this just to add on to that.
Yeah.
So at Deep Human X, we talk about X as your undefined variable, right, in your leadership journey. So, what is the X that you're most passionate about and drives your leadership and decision making?
Well, my leadership is always I'm very focused on the individuals. I mean, I'm very focused on people. When I was a Wendy's franchisee and a Tim Hortons franchisee, our franchise group was always one of the top five performing in the 20 something years that I was there. And it was interesting. We had one of the best turnover or retention. I hate turnover. We had one of the best retention rates. And one of the reasons we had one of the best retention rate is our focus on our people.
Mm,
It was very important that we focused on having them, especially our general managers, the store leader, because we wanted them to have the skills and abilities necessary to create great cultures within each of their individual restaurants. And we did every 90 days, we did engagement surveys to see how people felt about things. And we listened to those surveys and shared that with the general managers. And it was tough at first because people would say some rough stuff, but as people understood, we're not looking to like get anyone in trouble. We wanted to bring awareness. And so people, and I tell everyone, my daughter is a lawyer. I have another daughter that's a social worker. And the funny thing is, whether you're a lawyer, a social worker, you work in a factory, we're all in the people business. And when we
yeah.
understand that we're in the people business, and you understand how to, the soft skills are something that every business needs and is never going to go away, no matter what type of technologies are out there. So we really need to focus on the soft skills. And one thing I've learned, and I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. Every time I might think I understand people, I find someone that I'm encouraged because boy, this is a whole different person. I got to get to know them. And I have just a healthy curiosity to understand that person. And once I get to understand them, I know how to lead them better. So,
Yeah. I mean, we're all beautiful, creative beings as humans, right? We all have our own personal motivations, and it's pretty cool. So, my last question for you, Ken, is what are the top three skills that you feel people should work on developing to remain relevant and impactful in their careers? The human skills, top three skills.
so yeah, the top three human skills is one, um, so you got to care about people. Number one, especially, I think it's in everything, but in leadership for sure. There's a saying, and if people don't care to know what you know until they know that you care about it. So people, you're going to have a hard time leading anybody, but even just having just sells, if you want to be friend with the next guy that's working with you on the assembly line, you know, if you don't truly care about somebody, it shows. So you got to care about people. I would say have a healthy curiosity, you know, and what did Stephen Covey say? Um, seek first to understand before being understood. So
Mm,
before you want, we as people want to share our story. Well, I would urge people to first learn the other person's story. You'll find that they're more interested in your story if you want to hear their story first. And lastly, just again, be empathetic. Try to put yourself in their shoes. You may never be able to be in their shoes, but try to understand where they're coming from. And once you understand where someone's coming from, you can better understand that person and have a productive relationship. You don't always have to agree. You may fiercely disagree on many things, but if they understand, they think that you want to understand where they're coming from, you'll find that a lot of people do well with that. So those are the three top things that I'd say that people need to work on.
well, those are all great things to make your own life better by working on those skills. But Ken, really appreciate you being on the show today. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. And Ken, is there any place you'd like to send them, a website or anything, or
Yeah,
just
tell them to come to www.picklemansfranchising.com and take a look at us. some of you may want to just see when the next Pickleman's coming your way, or if you're looking at perhaps joining this team that's about a whole lot of love, one big pickle, come in and we'll get you set up with a development person, and we'll help you be the next Pickleman's franchisee.
Awesome, Ken. Thank you for sharing a whole lot of love in one big pickle with our audience, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks, Lori.